Welcome to the SaaS AdLab podcast, where we bring to you the stories of SaaS founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. My name is Luis. I'm the founder of Fantôm agency, a digital marketing agency specializing in scaling SaaS companies. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Josue. He is the CMO over at ReplyBuy. First of all, thank you so much for being on here today. It's a pleasure having you. And between, things that had happened, people being sick and whatnot, we kept pushing this back. I think maybe like 5, probably more times, but I'm glad we finally got to make it happen. And to get started, Josue, why don't you just tell us, I think first, just give a little bit of background on yourself, like what you've been doing, how did you get involved with ReplyBuy, and what's really been the journey so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Glad to be able to finally make it work. So yeah, I mean, I started with ReplyBuy, back in July 2018. At the time, we were pretty much a service-based business, not much of a SaaS company, but we did have a unique product and technology that essentially enables sports to have the ability to unlock transactions with a simple text. And so the market, at the time was B2C, B2C. The margins were low, and the growth was somewhat limited. So when I came on board, it changed. We kind of pivoted the business to be more product based, kind of switched to a SaaS model. The market is kind of now B2B, selling directly to businesses, enabling those businesses with turnkey solutions. And so the margins are a lot higher. The growth is, seamlessly unlimited. So been able to increase profits tremendously by 75%, just
Nice.
kind of switching that business model. So a lot of listeners, I know are into the whole idea of SaaS, kind of like the dream behind that, right? And so it's, it's very powerful model, and it's been successful for us. We've been able to grow 374% year over year. Nice. And, kind of like a 15% month-to-month growth today. So it's been pretty exciting journey so far. Lots to come, lots of curveballs along the way, but certainly excited for what's to come, man.
Yeah. And you mentioned a great point. We were actually touching on that, a little bit before we started recording, but that's just everything that's happening right now. There's likely recession if we're not already in it, which I think we are. And then we have COVID, which I feel like people think that's the reason for the recession. I don't necessarily think so, but I think it's one of the things that accelerated it. But how, it was an interesting conversation right before, is how this is affecting, obviously your clients, right? You mentioned that you were working with a lot of events type businesses. So they're putting up events. Like, what do you do when all of a sudden they have to cancel and your services directly, connected to those services that they're using, to those events that they're putting together? So what are some of the things that you think, specifically software companies should be doing when you're thrown this type of curveball and really it's completely out of, our control?
Yeah. So, in business, there's always going to be things that are, out of our control. So this is obviously at a massive scale, and it's not individual to any particular business. It's not individual. It's not like specific to any industry even. It just spans across industries. For us, a lot of our customers are in the sports and entertainment space, higher education space, some of the hardest hit industries with all this stuff happening. Even when it kind of all started to take a ripple effect, I feel like when the NBA announced that they were canceling, suspending, I should say, their season, it just was a domino effect after that, right? And so psychologically, the power that has in the industry and on the consumer side of things it's huge. And so, for us, this is an opportunity, and I suggest this to be the case for any SaaS company. It's an opportunity to go beyond the line of duty, right? It's an opportunity to show your customers how much you truly care, focusing really on customer retention, because just because you have a SaaS model that is somewhat predictable in terms of what monthly recurring revenues, annual recurring revenues, it's like, here's the thing. Even those annual deals, like 3-6 months from now, they might not renew simply because you just been cut out of the budget, right? So it's kind of like one of those things that like you have to maximize on the fact that, you know, your product is so essential that even during these times, you have to be able to increase consumer adoption, user adoption, right? Like if your usage is high, then that's going to be a good indicator that you're not going to be cut out of the budget, right? And so that's why it's so important to focus on customer retention, really focusing on serving your customers. What can you do? Having, you know, higher profit margins. Maybe you're not specifically driving a lot of customer acquisition. Maybe you cut back on your marketing spend, and that's okay. You know, It just focus on retaining what you already have. And, you know, a lot of customers, especially if you're serving SMBs, which we're not, but, you know, maybe some of the listeners, you know, are serving a lot of SMBs, and maybe your churn rate is at an all-time high. Right. Maybe a lot of cancellation requests coming through. And so one great thing to do is, like, as opposed to canceling accounts altogether, like, be flexible in providing the ability for accounts to pause, right? It's like, hey, you know, can we put you on a pause for, you know, for a month or two, right? As opposed to just kind of losing the business altogether, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you do, what happens is that, like, you're chasing back, you know, all those people that were once your customers, right? And the thing is that, like, right now, people are panicking, right? And it's like cancel, you know, lower operational cost. And the reality is, once things settle, which they will, eventually, you know, they're going to then realize, wow, we canceled this platform, but this is really an instrumental part of our in-place operations once everything kind of has normalized itself, right? But as opposed to losing it altogether, you know, you can just pause the account and kind of pick up that business once things settle down a little bit.
There's some interesting points, and something that just came to mind, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of different ways to go about it and saving money, obviously, but if, right, like right now, people like you, myself, and a lot of people in the space, right, with software and stuff like that, a lot of the people already work remotely. But personally, and I've talked to other people about it, and we've realized, you know, people are going to realize how easy it is to work remotely if they're able to organize things, if they're able to communicate and collaborate and everything as a team. And maybe it'll be a tipping point, right, where a lot of maybe not the entire world, right, like that's impossible, but a big amount of people are going to switch over to working remote just because they know, well, they're going to save a ton of money on overhead. First of all, people are going to be happier overall because they get to spend time with their families. But what I'm trying to get to here is, what if instead of realizing that, you know, this product, like, some of these people that are working remote now are going to realize and want to keep it that way, which could be possible for people that are getting rid of software companies, right? If I cut you out and I did, you know, well without your software during this time, that means I can get rid of you completely and still do relatively, you know, the same things that I was doing before. Maybe it's a couple of steps more or something, but we figured out a way to do it without your software specifically. So I think that goes, you know, to say, if you're able to, instead of completely cutting people off, which goes back to your point, right? Just give them that flexibility to pause, or maybe even just retain their account for 50% off or something, because they're not going to be even using it or not using it to its full potential because they can't do it because their clients are currently, you know, turned off or something. So I think just working on those retention tactics to make sure that people are staying, you know, even if they're paused, even if you're not making any money from them, you're going to be making no money from them regardless if they end up just canceling completely. Yeah. So I think it's a good way to just save some of that, you know, LTV down the line. And another idea that I had is, for when things do get better, which they will, do you think it'll be smart for businesses to have some sort of incentive to go with their service, since people are going to be getting out of a tough time or something like that? So, oh, come to us. We have, you know, 3 months for a discount or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, so to your point is, you know, it's, hey, you know, if you can offer a discount and people stay on board and kind of shift more to a usage model based on activity, like Slack is a great example of this. And they've done it like prior to this whole thing with coronavirus. Like, they have a system in place to where like inactive users basically don't get billed, right? So like I say, if you have an account with Slack with 100 enterprise account, 100 people, 20% of those users are not active, those accounts kind of fall into inactive mode, which means that automatically lowers your bill. Now, guess what happened with this, right? Like everything flipped, right? Like their business model was perfect for this because all those people that were inactive, their accounts were active, but the users were active, right? So once you become active, your payment's already on file and you're just getting billed, right? Because you just became an active user.
Right.
And so, kind of thinking about that, something like that. As far as trials, I mean, for us specifically, what we're doing is we're giving people free trials. And the reality is that like, we never did before. We never did. And so now it's like, we're using this to get in front of people that otherwise we wouldn't get in front of, right? And just telling them, it's like, hey, this crisis presents us with an opportunity to go beyond the line of duty, and as our humble effort to provide some sort of relief, this is what we're doing, right? And we say, hey, we're offering you a 60-day trial, and it's going to end March 31st. If you come on board March 1st, well, you're going to have a month for free. If you come on board tomorrow, you're going to have 60 days for free, right? But the free trial is up till May 31st. And it just kind of gives people a window of time to kind of breathe, but still have that sense of urgency. It's like, hey, if you want to take advantage of this, the sooner you get on board, the more time you're going to have. But then what happens is that obviously after that, you're going to have a sales conversation because they've utilized it. You've been a helping hand in their most dire time of need, right? And so you have 60 days to build that relationship essentially. And you're not trying to sell, you're not trying to sell them. You're not trying to be pushy. It's like, we're just trying to help, right? And the reality is that, a lot of SaaS models, like the margins are huge. So why wouldn't you, I know a lot of folks, listening might be bootstrapped, right? Might be having, low cash reserves. Like I get it, I get it. And there's no reason why you still wouldn't be doing a trial though. Cause you can do a limited trial, right? And still protect your margins, right? Maybe you do a limited trial based on specific usage limits and still protect your margins. So figure out how much value you can provide, but just keep in mind that the more value you provide up front, the more you're going to get on the back end. Right. And so in our mind, it's like, okay, well, budgets are frozen, but if we bring in, say, just to throw out a number and make the math simple, if we bring on 100 people on trial, we know how much our customers spent on average, right? And so we quantify that. It's like, okay, well, if we bring 100 people, right, and we can convert at least on the low end of things, 20% of those 100 trials, and then we times by our LTV,
it's going to be the best month.
Right. Yeah. It's, what I mean? Like everything you missed on for the last 2 months is all going to come back on you on the back end, plus all the outreach, right? Everything you're going to do,
well, it's not even that, right? Further. Like you got to think about like, obviously those things, but also second, third, fourth order consequences, right? If you're doing this as a good deed, the truth of the matter is that those people that you're helping out, they're going to tell other people that first of all you help them out, and obviously that the product is great and all those things. So it's just gonna snowball into, I think, a huge opportunity for people. And I see a lot of companies taking advantage of this time to, like you said, like either you're giving a free trial or if you're looking for example, I think Crisps.ai, which is a tool that I use to remove like background sound and stuff like that, they're giving the product for free to students and education and stuff like that, right? So they're just adding users at probably a huge rate right now because of word of mouth. If I'm a student, I typically wouldn't say right now I'm using this tool, but because it's free and I see that you now have to work from home and you have a bunch of noise, try it out. And now they're going to go to their network and do that same thing over and over again. And it's just going to create this massive thing. And once you know it, oh, well, we only did this because we wanted to help out, and now prices are going back to normal and you can get it, maybe if you act within the next 10 days, you can get it at a discount, or, whatever it may be, to create that incentive to bring them on board. But
Absolutely.
I think it goes, two different ways. You can either think of this as a time of just, complete loss, or you can find a way to create a minor pivot, or maybe a big pivot, and still find the light through, I guess, all the darkness, if you want to call it that. But I think people can definitely leverage this time to do some really good things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, it's like we're not steering away from the people that we've served, for the past years, right? Like fundamentally, we serve people in sports and entertainment and higher education for the most part. I mean, we have other people, other customers in other industries, but that's kind of like our core market, right? Our niche, so to speak. And just because all of this happens, it's like, we're not going to, get away from that. We're not going to lose focus. We're still going to look to serve those people while still being opportunistic, right? In other different areas, and thinking, okay, well, what are some other areas that we could perhaps expand to, right? And kind of, in a future case scenario, be in a much better spot where we can still kind of ramp up acquisition on that specific industry, right? Like for us, it's going to be e-commerce, right? And we're already building the fundamental blocks towards that, building a Shopify integration, kind of like all the process, all the technology that works right now with art integrations with all the ticketing platforms, Ticketmaster, Flash Seats, Tickets.com, et cetera, that we've proven in the sports space, we're going to take it to the e-commerce space, right? So it's not like we're not creating a whole different product. We're not changing the business model. It's just a matter how can you take your existing solutions and plug them into a different industry that perhaps is going to give you that versatility of, like, in a time like this, had we had that in place already, we would be focusing on customer acquisition on the retail e-commerce side of things, because clearly they're doing well, right? And then kind of focus on customer retention on the higher ed sports and entertainment space.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Now, to talk a little bit more about, before this entire thing happened, what were some of the biggest marketing challenges that you were faced with as a CMO?
Biggest marketing challenges. I think, I think early on, I was taking, and it was kind of like something that we learned as we went. I was taking more of like a spray and pray approach, of just kind of trying to serve everybody at the same time, and kind of like cast my net really, really wide and see what stuck. And I found that, like, those efforts were just, I mean, I guess it wasn't a learning experience, right? But looking back then, I would have kind of like honed in a lot sooner, in terms of messaging, but also like outreach, and the way I would go about kind of systemizing my specific outreach to be like super honed in, not just at the industry level, not just on the account level, but also at the department level. Mm-hmm. So, with bigger enterprise clients, if you're trying to go for, say, higher education space, for instance, if you go to the higher education space, that's your account. You can identify the accounts that you want to hit, but as opposed to going to the top, right, you can go by department. And so that for us has yielded a lot more results. So one of the bigger challenges, early on, was just kind of cracking that. And so now it's been great because you just kind of build a moat around, that specific space, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not the higher education space. It just kind of becomes more of a smaller blue ocean, mm-hmm. that you can operate a lot more efficiently.
And what kind of marketing is it that's brought the most results? Are you guys doing like cold outreach, any PPC, direct mails to schools or something like that?
Yeah, so we have text messaging solutions, but unfortunately with those you can't do cold prospecting because of carrier regulations and whatnot outside of our control. So we've leveraged email for the most part. Yeah, so cold emails have been instrumental. Sales and marketing outreach with Mixmax is the tool that we use. Yeah. And so just being super yeah, super honed in, and the people that we want to serve yield the most responses, the most open rates across the board. But it also has like kind of that domino effect where, if you make an acquisition, say within a state, you can kind of leverage that name to reach out to other higher education institutions within that state, or within the same sports conference, even, or just across departments. But yeah, cold emailing, man, has been the name of the game for us. In fact, it's what we've done early on. We're currently not even doing PPC. We're in the process of implementing that. I'm cracking down on the funnels. Well, yeah, I think for starters, we're still gonna go ahead and do retargeting because why not? Because we already have all the lists, right? We already have all the lists. It's just about plugging in that data. Granted, all those business addresses are not going to yield a very high match rate with, say, Facebook audience database. It might be a 30-40% match if you're lucky. But you can run those retargeting ads, at very small budgets, right? So going cold specifically might be put on hold, but I don't know, man. You probably speak more to that, but from what I hear, it's low, right? A lot of companies have pulled their budgets, so the CPAs and CPLs are coming down.
Right.
But granted, you have to look at how is that going to affect from the conversion standpoint, right? Like you might have a lot of leads, but not a lot of people actually spending money.
Right.
And for our specific industry and kind of what we're focusing on, we've just learned from our customers, from the people that were reaching out. It's like, hey, love it, we're interested, but give me a week, or give me a couple months. It just varies from a couple weeks.
Right.
I think the people that are saying a couple weeks are just kind of a little bit more, optimistic, and perhaps in states that haven't been as affected. But people out in the East Coast, oh man, they're just
they're hurting.
They're telling you, talk to me in 2-3 months. So it just kind of varies across the board.
Totally. Now, when you say cold emailing, are you guys doing like you literally, like you said, mix match? I don't think I've heard of that before, but I'm guessing it's an email automation tool.
Yeah. So it's a cold email automation tool. Think like, what are some other solutions out there? Like Outreach, Reply.io, AutoClose is another one, which is fairly small. Pipedrive, I believe. So yeah, just cold email automation for prospecting purposes. So, you're able to build sequences and whatnot, but it's, our approach is not like, you're not sending marketing emails, right? I say sales and marketing because essentially you are doing that pitch, but the idea is that you're asking for the call, right? You're asking for a 15-minute conversation to have a discovery call. And then from there, you take them to product demonstration and spend a little bit more, 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Is that like you literally just sending an email and say like, this is a product, would you like to get on a call? Or I guess just for the people that are listening, what is the approach behind, the secret formula here that you've cracked so far? Is it, are you trying to not to, obviously not deceive people, but like, what is the approach to get them to actually to reply? Is it really just, asking for them if they want to try a call out or something like that?
Yeah. So, the golden rule when you're trying to do cold emailing is delivering a personalized message that is both timely and relevant. I truly believe in that. So a lot of people do kind of take the spray and pray approach, right? And the spray and pray approach is that you have like these massive like audiences, and you're just like, oh, fantastic, I'm going to send out 1,000 emails today, and maybe you split it across, 4 different email aliases. You're sending 250 emails per alias because you're limited by, if you're using the Gmail API, you're limited by 300 email sends a day. So, and you have to warm up to it, by the way. So for those of you listening, don't go out and just, start hashing out 300 emails a day. You need to build up email reputation, but also the reputation of that sending alias, that sending email alias. So maybe you want to start at the low end, 20, 25, and kind of ramp up from that. we're kind of already ramped up to the point that we can send, 200, 300 emails a day without kind of running into problems. Is still optimizing for those open rates, et cetera. So the basic email structure is basically, first of all, you're looking at 150 characters to 200, 150 to 200 words, sorry, not characters. So you're establishing a rapport, you're building credibility and authority, you're calling out to pain points that the customer has because you're an industry expert and you've done your research, right? And then number 3, you ask for the call. And you always ask for the call on a question. It's like, can I have 20, 50 or 15 minutes of your time? You're very specific about your request, and you asked in the form of a question. And then that's the first email. Then the second email is like super brief. Like the second email always comes as a reply to the first email. It's, your 2 sentences. It's like, I haven't heard back from you. Is this something you're worth exploring? ? And that's it. And then I send a third email as well. So the whole sequence typically takes 9 days. Sometimes it takes less, depending on just kind of what the urgency is. Like right now, our sequences are like every 2 days, right? You're hitting people up because it's kind of like a timely thing, and you're really just trying to help. But you don't include any links, none of that. It's just like you're just being very personal, right? A lot of which I had to let go, man, coming from a marketing background. It's a very different approach to really be able to do cold prospecting at scale and take kind of that marketing approach, because you really have to change your language. All those direct response, like kind of words, trigger words that you utilize in PPC, it's just not going to work with people. Right. So you got to kind of tone it down and be more man-to-man, so to speak, and make them feel that you're actually crafting that message and you've really taken the time. And so data management's huge, having accurate data as well. So outside of that, I mean, it's just timing, right? Some people you're going to hit up, like we've been there's accounts that we've been hitting up for months, dude, and they have been unresponsive. And they've been opening emails, right? Like you have the data, they've been opening emails, but they haven't responded. And now with this, trial offer, they're responding, right? Yeah. So again, it's just presents you all this stuff, man. It just presents you with an opportunity to really get in front of people that you otherwise wouldn't have. And these are conversations that are going to end up being, 5-figure deals,
right?
And just one department, right? And again, it's like you sign one department, then it kind of takes the ripple effect onto others. So there's a lot more to be had. It's just a matter of like, are you getting in front of the customers at the right time? And the sales and marketing playbook right now, it's very different than it was, even a month ago.
Yeah,
it's just you have to be able to show more empathy and more sympathy even within your emails, and make it more human. Because I mean, I'm like, when it comes to business, I'm all about business, right? I'm super straightforward, but even now me, it's like, dude, I mean, at least one sentence, it's just about like, I hope everything's okay with you, your team, your family, like you guys are safe and whatnot. First and foremost, first sentence, right? And believe it or not, that's gone a long way, dude, because, we're as a nation, we're in this together. So
now to kind of switch into, first, I think those were awesome tips for anyone that's, looking to ramp up any sort of email marketing, cold prospecting type effort. So thank you for that. But to switch over to a more personal side of things of, running the marketing department for a company and having, to deal with this and really growing the company, what are some of the things that you personally are very good at?
Some of the things that I'm personally good at. I'd say I got.
If I ask you, like, what's the best thing you could possibly do? Like, if you could do one thing and you just know every single time you do it, you're going to crush it. What is that?
Yeah. So before I started with ReplyBuy, it was, I think it would have been PPC, specifically with Facebook and Instagram. I've taken a deep dive into this cold email prospecting stuff, and dude, we back in September of 2018, we launched in beta, and right now we're like in excess of $400,000 annual recurrent revenue, and it's all been through cold email. Can I amplify that 10x with PPC? Sure, I can, and I believe there's going to be a time for that. But I'm a huge believer in the cold email strategy right now. And that's, it's rather ironic. I don't think I'm the most excited about cold email, kind of as what it's, the opportunity it presents and where it's going like 2-3 years from now. I still think that that's text messaging, which is, why we're in the space and kind of like in the forefront of all of it. I'm the most excited about text messaging because consumer attention is all going to mobile, right? You live in a day and age where 50% of plus consumers prefer mobile as their preferred device, right? 78% of consumers wish they could text businesses. And then they can't, right? So I think like it's kind of like the point where there's going to be there's a radical shift of like
tipping point.
Yeah, we're like consumer adoption is there to the point that now businesses are going to take much more pay more attention, because where the attention is, the money follows, right? And so I believe text messaging is positioned to be what email was, say, 10 years ago, right? And so, for us, at ReplyBuy, it's like we aim to be, the easiest way to start a conversation, and close a sale. And so, it's exciting, right? Because our solutions today, are enabling businesses to collect payments with a simple text and manage conversations, one-to-one conversations at scale. And we started doing this, like collecting payments back in 2014.
Wow.
Like like Gary Vee wasn't talking about text messaging, right? Like all these people that are kind of in the forefront, they weren't talking about text messaging. And a lot of people didn't believe that people would actually conduct purchases, via text. And we proved that out. Like we've transacted more than $10 million worth of transactions. Just people literally natively responding on the Messages app and making purchases upwards of $100. Like our average purchase is like $115, right? So it's not like people are buying like, trinket items of like $20 or less. And, the data that we've been able to collect across across the number of years we've been in business it's pretty impressive, because, no other channel converts at the rate that we're seeing. We're seeing 2% conversion rates across the board. So what I mean is, like, you said you have a 10K list of mobile subscribers, for instance, 2% of that convert, right? Not 2% of the people that respond, but 2% of the people that actually you send that message to. So that's 200 buyers right there, right? So if you take the average cart value that I gave you, and I'll say $116, that's $23,200 in added revenue. Now, here's the thing: that's not going to take you very much, because the way our platform is designed, it's all like flash sales, right? It's kind of like urgency, drive, scarcity, right? Limited inventory, kind of utilizing all those crucial elements of marketing. So all of that happens in like 30 minutes, right? So if you have the power to send out an offer, a specific offer to an audience, so it's 10,000 people, 2% conversion rate, $116 average cart value, $23,200 in sales in just 30 minutes. Like that's very powerful. And we've seen across the board, with sports teams kind of driving those offers and just being sold out, generating $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in sales in just a matter of half an hour to an hour. It's very, very powerful.
That's awesome. And you can see that across the board with mostly what I've seen it with is e-com, right? Like you subscribe to anything, and then next thing you know, you have a text message with an offer trying to get you to buy something. And I'm sure probably you and I and a lot of people have bit on that, offer that they sent. It's pretty cool to see how things start to change like that. Now, what is one thing that you're not very good at?
One thing that I'm not very good at. Man, I have to think about that one, man.
Good at everything.
No, I wouldn't say I'm good at everything. I think, I don't know. I think probably, but if I were to say something just kind of off the cuff here, probably more traditional methods of marketing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, think like printed material or like billboards and
I feel like
direct mail. Like, I don't know, like the stuff. I'm like fully digital. Like all the marketing that I've done is like digital.
Yeah.
So I mean, I do have a creative background. I feel like I could provide like good guidance and whatnot, but in terms of like just the strategies and kind of what, what works,
Yeah.
I haven't really delved in that space. And quite frankly, I don't really want to. If I can just kind of get away from it at that point, dude. If we're spending money on like print,
yeah,
and kind of more traditional channels like direct mail, I'd want to hire somebody that kind of like owns that, right, and has done it for 10, 20 years.
Oh, totally.
But digital is the way to go. I mean, that's right. I'd be preaching to the choir if I go down that rabbit hole. But that's my forte, and that's pretty good place to be. So
it is a great place. Now, a couple more questions here. I don't know if you like to read, but if you do like to read, what is one of your favorite books?
Favorite books, man. So I'm gonna throw one out there that maybe some people might need to right now. And it's not, it's not even related to marketing, man. I'm huge in personal development. And so there's this book called the Motivation Manifesto by Brendon Burchard. And I think during times of this, it's a good read. I've gone back to it during these times, just because, if I were to describe myself with one word, I'd say resilient, right? I've been through ups and downs in life, man. I didn't have a perfect upbringing and privilege, right? In a lot of ways. But nonetheless, I've been grateful along the way and try to build a life that it's a lot, it's a lot greater than I thought it would be, and provide further contribution to the world and improve my family legacy, et cetera. But that book, The Motivation Manifesto by Brendon Burchard, it just strengthens my resolve, man. I mean, it's super motivating, and just the tone of it, it's kind of like the kind of book that I would write based on the tone of it. And I just kind of like when I read it, I kind of like stand up and feel like I'm preaching, you know what I mean? Like I'm talking to an audience and just like, empowering them to be better and do better. And it's just awesome. But during these times, I mean, it's a great read. So
yeah, we'll see if Amazon wants to ship it. But cool. I'll have to check that out. And what are, the one SaaS company that you look up to? I know you mentioned Slack earlier, so I'm guessing you're a big follower of Slack and everything they do everything great, but any other one that you look up to just based on what they're doing?
I guess based on what they're doing right now. I mean, dude, it's hard to get away from the customer, the ones that are doing really well right now. So I don't want to because I know, I assume Slack is just kind of like, yeah, of course they're doing great. I don't know. I'd probably say Slack right now.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of people's favorite. It's just they're doing really, really good with their product.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
I'd say Slack. I mean, and part of it is just because of what I explained earlier. Just the fact that, that model was so unconventional, and people would be like, yeah, that's not going to work. I'm always rooting for the underdog. Like, mind you, Microsoft Teams, they've added more users than during the past 2 weeks than what Slack has in total. Right. So they're the massive competitor of Slack, but I always root for the underdog, and it's rewarding to see that something that people think that's unconventional, now it's kind of like proven to work at a massive scale.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're involved in some capacity, but specifically from administration standpoint, like think if it was you, dude, you'd be so proud of like going into the room and saying, I told you so.
Yeah.
You know, to your board of directors, to all your investors, right? It's like, I told you so, right? And so like, in a way, that's where we were, you know, when we were trying to prove out that this technology would work, that that consumers would actually purchase, like that's what we were hearing. Like the amount of no's that we would get from investors is like, no, it's not going to work. Like it's, you know, there's no way people are going to be, you know, confident enough to just transact through text, and now it's happening, right? And like everybody's want to jump on board. Of course, we have the technology and kind of like the patents around it, and everybody else who tells you, yeah, they're doing it, but they're just sending out links, dude. I mean, they're just sending text messages. Here, click this link, takes into a landing page. Right. Oh, it's a mobile optimized landing page, this and that. We do it all natively within the Messages app. So
awesome. Cool. And one last question here. Where can people find you online, Josue?
Yeah, so the best way to connect with me personally is on my LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com/I am Josue Sanchez. On a personal level, you can connect with me there. And then to find us and what we're doing, ReplyBuy.com is where we're at. If you guys text SaaS to 20123, that you're going to get an auto response, kind of learn more about us, and a discount as well. Is that okay?
Can I go for it.
Cool. Yeah. So I love to offer a discount, and then if you're listening to this episode and it's prior to March 31st, I'd love to extend to you a free trial up to May 31st. So May 31st. So it's about 60 days from the time this is being recorded. I know it's going to be published a little bit later than that, but if you're listening during that time, feel free to reach out to me as well. But then text SaaS to 20123. So if the offer is still available, you'll see the auto response to the landing page to get the trial. If it's not, well, you'll give you a 20% discount, I promise. But
awesome.
Yeah, nonetheless, great opportunity to take advantage.
Thanks, Josue. Appreciate that. Appreciate you doing that for the audience and everyone here. And again, thank you so much for being on here. It's a pleasure having you. I had a really good time speaking with you. And we'll cut it off there. Stay safe and best of luck with everything.
Absolutely, man. Cheers. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.